Hello, and welcome to AI Curious. My name is Jeff Wilser. I'm a journalist, I'm a human, and I am curious about AI. One of the first things people worry about when they see the lightning quick answers and crazy encyclopedic knowledge of ChatGPT is, oh my God, teachers are screwed. Every kid now has the best cheating machine ever known to man. What are we going to do? And yeah, it's true that students can easily knock out papers and essays and term papers at the click of a button. But it's also true that with a bit of creativity, AI can be harnessed by educators to help enrich and accelerate learning. And this gets us to our guest today, Danny Rojas, the Executive Director of All-Star Code. Now, All-Star Code is a nonprofit computer science education organization with a focus on young Black and Latino men. They're based in New York, and they do things like 6-week intensive summer programs where students can go from not knowing any code to becoming nearly experts who are college or even workforce ready. One very cool stat I saw is that 55% of their students over the age of 18, or scholars in their parlance, are first-generation college students. As you'll hear from Danny, All-Star Code believes in the ability of emerging tech to empower people, reduce racial inequalities, and help boost financial agency. And they are now taking that same approach with AI. So why does this matter? Apart from the obvious good mission of this organization, I think Danny's approach to AI is super forward-thinking, super inspiring, and super instructive to all of us. As you'll hear from our conversation, they're basically using AI in 3 ways. 1, to actually help improve, personalize, and accelerate the student's education. 2, they're teaching the students about AI, giving them AI skills, and that's now important in the workplace. And 3, they're savvily using AI to help them grow and scale the nonprofit. Danny gives some really hyper-concrete, specific examples that anyone, really in any job, can benefit from. More fundamentally, for all of us, I think there are kind of 2 ways you can approach AI. You can ignore it or maybe be hostile to it or afraid of it, or you can embrace it, make it work for you. All-Star Code is a great example of a smart team that's doing the latter. I had a great time speaking with Danny. I'm inspired by the work they're doing, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. So I now bring you Danny Rojas, Executive Director of All-Star Code. Danny, welcome to the pod.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Excited to be here.
So what is the mission of All-Star Code, and give us the basics of what you guys do?
So All-Star Code is a national computer science education nonprofit with the mission of creating economic opportunity. Our beneficiaries are boys and young men of color, and we're creating that economic opportunity by preparing them to be the next generation of innovators, creators, entrepreneurs in the innovation economy. So we've been we actually are celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year of impact. We started with 20 students that trusted us back in 2014 in a small classroom, really taking a dive together in terms of how we can provide exposure, confidence, and competence that they belong in the tech sector, and ultimately build a community or a brotherhood, really.
How are you guys now starting to use AI in the service of that education?
Being able to really accelerate or augment personalized learning. I think that's one really interesting data point when it comes to the intersection of AI and learning science, is the opportunity to create a co-pilot in your learning experience, right? To not give you the answers, but to almost use a Socratic method to ask you the right levels of the right questions as you're solving a particular problem.
I'm so curious. Have you guys, I've heard about this in theory. I've heard this as the potential for a co-pilot for students. What does that look like?
Yeah, we've been trying two specific applications. One with Khan Academy. There's a co-pilot feature with Khan Academy that we've been experimenting with, again, like seeing how accurate, how user friendly is and ultimately how integrated is it in the learning experience for our students. So it's kind of one example. The other is using GitHub's coding copilot. So as our
Mm.
students are diving into code, that's another tool that we've been using. And what we're seeing is that, yeah, it's pretty effective. It not only provides a baseline for our students to, and even accelerating sort of time, um, but I think what it's starting to underscore for us and for the students is like, well, I really need to understand the fundamentals and the basics,
Hmm.
whether it's of math, STEM, or coding, in order for me to really take advantage of the generative AI solution to co-pilot, to work with me, to get to know my learning styles, my biases, my own preferences. But it's really important that the subject matter that our students actually more, even though like you're like AI can accelerate, actually they need to understand even more how these fundamental building blocks, for example, to write HTML, JavaScript, or CSS, how important it is, and then to be able to use these tools to accelerate in their next sort of level of learning. So that's how we've been using some of the Copilot technology.
Can you elaborate a little more on what that looks like? So I understand conceptually that the Copilot, it acts almost like a Socratic dialogue to kind of ask questions and prompts of a student, if I'm thinking of this correctly. Can you maybe give an example of even how that appears? Is it like a text box where a student is asked a question, and then or does the student ask them a question, or does they ask the student a question, and then the co-pilot kind of gives like a partial answer and encourages them to go deeper? If you wouldn't mind sharing an example or two of kind of to make this a little clearer for me.
Yeah, no, that you're spot on. So the two applications are it is a chatbot like feature where you can ask questions, and it's also within the context of writing code in a syntax format. The Copilot is there sort of with you line by line to either validate, to identify potential gaps in your code or like logic breaks, and you can also ask it to be able to run new functions and features within the set of code. So we're seeing both applications in practice, and I think the chatbot feature is also interesting. We're looking to adopt that feature as part of the way that we communicate with our students as well. So being able, for example, for students outside of coding and outside of Khan Academy, to be able, for example, students have needs. They want a resume review, or they want to
Mm-hmm.
understand what's the best way that I could position my candidacy for a job. And we're starting to see
Mm.
some co-piloting features and chat features that just continue to interrogate and I say that in a positive way, but continue to ask the right
Sure.
levels of questions to be able to give insight to the student. So like, I want to go into healthcare IT. The role I'm looking at is a data scientist. What are ways that I could maybe position my resume? And there are examples that the Copilot will help with. So that I think is really powerful. And for All Star Code, we're looking to implement that type of technology, especially when our our network of scholars continues to grow every year, and those needs are they're always coming to us, whether it is not only resume review but a recommendation letter or something specific around a technical problem or a career problem. We want to be able to have that ability to have the AI interact at least at level one, level two. I almost think about it as a service desk, right? So level one, level two
Yeah.
questions that can be answered by the chatbot, and level three, of course, can go to to one of our qualified staffers. But we're trying to see how not only is AI impacting the learning experience, but actually even the service experience that we deliver for the organization to our students. So it's a combo platter of both.
Do you need to prime or prep these co-pilots in advance? So I'm guessing can't just work out of the box like Chat GPT 4. You probably just don't give that to the students and say go to town, right? Do you
Yeah.
is there any priming or initial prompting you do to kind of create a bit of a almost a filter or a point of view for the chatbot, so that when the chatbot then interacts with the students, they have the appropriate presentation? And one reason I ask, I'm thinking
Yeah.
broader here for other
Mm-hmm.
listeners out there who might not have the exact same organization as you do, but it's very easy to imagine how this kind of co-pilot technology and model could be used in a variety of interesting ways, whether at nonprofits or for profits or big companies, small companies, or even someone's small team. And I'm wondering what kind of, as you're thinking about best practices for how to make the most out of the Copilot experience. So, how have you guys tackled the Copilot engineering? Let's call it.
Yeah, we're early stages. So, but we do have a vision, and that is to build our own language learning model, to build, and really one of the gaps. And I was just speaking to a funder about AI and in the philanthropic community, and a big part is like, how are we going to teach generative AI sort of the aspects of social justice that we're fighting for in the work that we do around racial
Mm-hmm.
equity and tech access. And the more and more we spoke about that, and again, the pilots that we've been using largely GitHub and Khan Academy. So these are the commercial tools that are out there. So we haven't primed too much, but that's the game. The end game is for us to actually operate our own generative AI that is inclusive of data sets that represent our community, right? With all the security and protection around that, but also with the values that we fight for when it comes to the
Mm-hmm.
work that All Star Code is engaged in. So we very much see that co-pilot engineering, the platform AI platform engineering, having a layer of context, of values and organizational beliefs, and frankly the scholar code of conduct, essentially that we
Sure.
very much are very proud of, that can be the underpinnings of how information is presented, how we are centering the Black and Latino boys as the heroes in their story, with All Star Code being an
Mm-hmm.
incubation to their startup founders of their own life. So making sure that we're always lifting up, and asset framing. To your point, the presentation is key because we want to asset frame the potential, the dreams and aspirations of these boys, where we're in a society that has a different narrative, right? We're looking to shift narrative, and we're hoping that AI and
Yeah.
co-piloting can actually accelerate some of that narrative shift for us.
Love that. On the flip side of that coin, question that teachers across the nation have been grappling with is the cheating question, right? How do
Yeah.
they think about AI with respect to cheating? How do you reimagine curriculums given the capacity for cheating? How have
Mhm.
you thought about that?
Yeah, yeah. I'll give you just one example. I think listening to different examples of how educators and students are engaging with generative AI, it would be helpful. And most recently, I was providing testimony for a New York City council hearing on the role of AI, emerging technology, and computer science instruction in New York City public schools. And while it's both very exciting, it's also contentious when you think about the privacy implications and a range of different training implications to it. But what was heartening, as an example, a middle school in Queens decided to request access to ChatGPT, and with their students were reading Shakespeare and used ChatGPT to talk to Hamlet, right? To have a conversation with one of the
Hmm.
characters, and to be able um, to review the conversation and marry it and sort of intersect it with where there were, where the chapter was, and sort of the tone of what the story has been, and whether that matches up in terms of the character, just
Hmm.
sort of the character development. The other is actually straight up using ChatGPT to write essays on a particular topic, actually
Mm-hmm.
having students write something, and then coming back into the classroom and really unpacking, like, what did it get right and what didn't it get right, what was missed
Interesting.
in the context. So I think what we're seeing is educators really leaning in, especially those that are, believe in STEM, but that are really like curious also about how they could use AI in instruction. And I think that's the position that All Star Code has. Like, we're leaning fully in. We want our students to be able to practice, to understand prompt engineering, and understand how they can use that approach to explore and discover, and also we believe that, I mean, AI is going to provide so much value for educators, right? To be able to identify learning gaps and create personalized learning plans for students that need more attention, that need more direct support. Um, in addition, to be able to do some lesson planning and to do some prep for the teachers, so that so our instructors, we manage cohorts of about 25 to 28 students during our programming. So it's going to be an important tool. We're excited to test it. We've seen New York City schools and other schools that are sort of piloting this type of approach, and just in terms of the research with learning science, looking at AI and other emerging technologies, there, whether it is dashboards in the classroom that the teachers can get access to sort of see where their students are in terms of a learning journey. Using sensors as an example outside of the classroom. We know learning happens not just in the classroom, but it could happen in a basketball court. It could happen in museums. And so how do you use the Internet of Things, right? IoT and devices and sensors to be able to upload data and then do some visualization on that data, understand what are the trends, what are the insights that you are able to see to improve your shot, as an example. So we're seeing not just AI, but we're seeing really emerging technology at the precipice of learning science and where it can go from here. Kind of imagining what is a 2030 digital first classroom is pretty exciting, right? Being able to have access to these types of tools and to make the learning really really pop and really relevant, most importantly, relevant to the interests of the student.
Is it fair to say that from the student's perspective, this helps cultivate a more dynamic and engaged, interactive learning experience, right? As opposed to like the student just being lectured at, not that you guys are just lecturing baseline.
Absolutely. And I think it also accelerates project-based learning. And that's what sort of the way we approach it is we're very minimal on kind of lecture style. We'd rather go and do and break things. And so a big part of what we do.
Sorry, what's a project-based learning? Can you give an example or two of what that is?
Sure. So being able to apply, for example, if we're teaching arrays and loops, like how are we creating it's not just follow the instruction, but we're creating a situation or scenario where we have a particular story that for us is anchored in our culturally sustaining pedagogy, something that is relevant for our students, right? Something that touches culture, identity, but the project-based learning has a particular expected outcomes. You can get there however you'd like, but we're teaching sort of the core fundamentals, and then we're allowing the students to experiment. And if they can code and they can fail, that's actually a win. We see it as a win. We celebrate failure. We know code never works the first time, but allowing students to select what projects they want to work on and getting and understanding what is the expected outcome, and then allowing them to be able to navigate freely. I think AI and emerging technology tools are just going to be able to, I think, accelerate that and maybe create just new worlds and contexts for them to play in.
You mentioned that it could be used to help with lesson planning and help educators and teachers think about mapping out the curriculum. Have you started to play with that, and what have you learned so far?
Yeah, I think what's been interesting is generative AI is able to share a pretty good structure. Like I think like it may not be 100% accurate, but the logical structure of a lesson plan, right? With enough prompting and context, and again asking like, write this for a seventh grader versus a 12th grader versus a college age student that is studying computer science in their third year. It's able to provide some pretty good guardrails. So I think the structure of lesson planning is definitely accelerated. That's incredibly helpful. What can we expect by the end of this 30 minutes? You will expect to learn the following things, and I think that's very, very helpful. Being able to think about ways that, again, it's not rote memorization. It's these small projects or examples. I think being able to then cobble together and design a curriculum experience that hits the expected outcomes, but also makes it dynamic. And I think AI really does. We've seen that it's been very helpful in building that type of dynamic curriculum planning.
And you mentioned that this last summer you incorporated AI into the curriculum. What did you learn and what did the staff learn from that experience?
We learned that that our students were super hungry for this content. They have,
Mm,
they've also seen, like every, I think, like every student, just the rapid mainstream adoption of those two letters, and what that means, and how it's everything is now AI dash insert, right? So they were, so the curiosity was incredibly high. What we learned was, was really interesting. I mean, they've gained a stronger understanding of generative AI. They were, by the end, they were better prepared to use generative AI for learning, and they're more familiar with the abilities and the limitations of artificial intelligence. I think that was something that we walked away with, and there were some really interesting verbatims that we heard back from students. Like one I'll share is, my main takeaway was that it'll be a while before the robots take over, right? And then that was, very interesting from them. But others were, it was, very informative day. Enjoyed it very much. I thought it was perfect at the very beginning, but realized it has a lot of flaws, and noticed that AI technology isn't just there when it comes to replacing jobs and stepping in the workforce, but it's something that we need to be top that needs to be top of mind. So there was like both an understanding of like what it is and what it's not, but also we got into the conversation of what it means just for society at large. And I think that was very insightful, hearing from 13,
mm.
14, 15 year olds. They're going to be the power users by the time we fast forward 10 years, and they'll be able,
By
they're the
next
ones that are
month,
going
I
to.
think they'll be the power
Yeah,
user.
really, you're right. Yeah, so we learned a lot, and I think what we learned was, um, there's a demand. Like, there is a huge demand for bespoke learning paths around AI. So what we're doing is partnering and working with coalitions that are invested in education for artificial intelligence. AI EDU, AI for All being two organizations that, code.org, that have put together curriculums at different levels in kindergarten through 12th grade to reach different audiences. Some
Hmm.
are more, more, sort of user friendly, if you will, for the student. But there are resources. There's investment. It's coming, right?
I'm making this framework up on the fly, so it could be very flawed, but it seems like there are almost two different buckets of AI in education. There's the learning about AI, such as how LLMs work, how machine learning works, how to prompt engineer. That's kind of one bucket. And the second one is using AI in the service of learning about other stuff, right? So it's learning about AI and then using AI to help with learning. It's like you guys are doing both and are
Right.
aggressively leaning into both, which I think is personally, I think, profoundly very smart. I'm curious about a little. I'd love to hear a little more about the bucket of using AI to help with overall learning. I love the example you gave about speaking to Hamlet. I would never have guessed of that top of mind as how AI is involved in school. What are some other surprising ways you found AI to be helpful in helping kids learn subjects beyond coding and science? What are some other kind of, I wouldn't have thought AI is helpful for this, but it worked out really well.
Yeah, I think providing a framework for what we call now prompt engineering, right? Like really thinking about the context, what we want the AI, what we want the generative AI, like what role do they should they play in the questions that we're asking it, and I think that playing with tone and tenor, it's really interesting because we used examples of just
Mm.
writing correspondence back to specific folks, whether it is a college administrator or it's a community member or a church leader that you want to volunteer for, or practical applications for high school students in particular. And what they found
Mm.
was that they were able to tune, right, their own communication and their own way um, of both being authentic but also augmented by
Hmm.
generative AI in terms of how they approach these stakeholders that are really important as they're building their portfolio to higher education pathways. So we used it for that purpose. But we also had students that were interested in film. Like as an example, they were interested in film and they wanted to ask the AI like questions like, I'm a new filmmaker and trying to break into the scene. What are some recommendations that you can give me? And it just started, I think, a discovery and an exploration phase for students that were interested in that particular question.
Love it.
And that's the power of generative AI, is that regardless of topic, whatever you're interested in, you can apply prompt engineering and sort of go down the rabbit hole. And I say that in a very positive way, to understand, to empathize, to position, to really learn about that particular subject area. Film, sneakers. Another one that's popular with our community is entrepreneurship, right? So like, how can I stand up an Amazon store? How can I do drop ship? Our students are just so resourceful and brilliant that that's how they're looking at AI. How can I use it in that way? The other way I would say is using different chats for different purposes. So if there is a chat for product, and I just want to ask it, and I want to teach it like aspects of product management, product development, versus another one which may be more sales, and they used chat GPT in that way, different almost functional areas, to help build the demo day projects that they presented. So our demo day project after in the summer intensive is after 6 weeks. They present a technical product demo of an application that will solve a social impact challenge. So part of the use of AI was to figure out, is this an idea commercial? It can be commercial. Would it be accepted by the community? Several different questions to really sort of kick the tires and make sure they have like,
it's like a free Shark Tank, a free Shark Tank analysis. Yeah.
No, but they're using it in that entrepreneurial way. Yeah, Shark Tank style, validating, improving certain assumptions, right or wrong. I think that's a great way to play with generative AI as a student.
So when we spoke off mic a while ago, you describe All Star Code as a small but mighty nonprofit, and I love that. And I think there are many nonprofits in a similar boat as far as being lean, scrappy, bootstrappy. Your team should probably be twice the size, whatever it is. You guys are doing a lot of work. And you mentioned that AI is helping your team be more efficient. It's helping you guys grow and scale. It's helping cut down on some tedious work, giving you more time to do kind of higher value work. So I'd love to dive into that a little bit. I'd love to hear how, because you clearly are incredibly progressive and forward thinking on AI and education. And it sounds like you are doing the same thing with AI in your organization efficiency. So what are some ways you found AI to be helpful to make your team's life easier?
We meet with a lot of partners, and our work really, it's really important that we have clear understanding and objectives, and really make sure that we're driving our partnerships forward. And one of the ways that we do that is, just through partnership management, there's always going to be conversations, notes, action items, who said what, by when, right? So it's sort of the tactical operation of just like of running a partnership. And we've been able to tap into tools like Xena, which is by a company called Zembly, that connects to both your Google Calendar, Zoom, and Slack. So after, essentially it's similar to Otter AI, but it actually, at least what we found, is that it actually is able to, again, provide action items. You can click on the part of the video of a Zoom that's recorded and kind of like validate and verify, like what is it that I said? Oh yeah, that's what I said. So I think that, because that work is so tough, being, sometimes you say, oh, it's just action items, it's just notes that you're taking, but actually it's not just notes. It's the formative idea generation that we have with our partners and with our constituents, even internally, like making sure that we're always sending out this type of information, and drives our project management forward. So that's been incredibly helpful. And it connects to your calendar, which is huge. So you can ask it like, make sure that I have 30 minutes in my calendar at some point this week to review a proposal or to have some thinking time, and it'll block it out for you.
Very cool.
And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
really, yeah, that's super helpful. A personal assistant essentially for everyone. That's incredibly helpful. We've also been tapping into some, we're doing some research now to tap into donor research and being able to leverage some of the AI tools that can accelerate just how you move from a prospect and someone that's kind of interested in the
Mm.
organization to become an actual donor and a recurring donor at that. So we're looking at different research tools that powered by AI that can help us just with the movement management portion of it. So like I think the standard is if typically if communicated 5 to 7 times, you're sort of sharing value and you kind of guide someone down the
Right.
funnel, the sales funnel, if you will. So like that's important for us, especially as we meet with so many folks and folks are interested. We have a winning message. We have a mission that resonates with folks. So making sure
Mm-hmm.
that we're properly stewarding these potential donors and supporters is really important. And I think all nonprofits, that's a challenge for most nonprofits, is how can you do that at scale. So we are investing time, resource, and treasure into that particularly.
And how about for things like external communications, whether marketing
Yeah.
materials or correspondence or grant writing, even? I'm making this up, but have you toyed with using AI to help in those functions?
Yeah, so with grant writing and anything to report writing, we certainly have. And again, I think the value is in the structure. Like, how can you write a compelling proposal? How do you position certain winning messages within a proposal? And I think AI actually is very helpful because it may provide a different perspective in terms of how we were initially going to approach it. We have a few different
Hmm.
avenues to think about. Midjourney. I mean, Midjourney is also another tool that we use when we come up with different graphics and collateral and social media posts. That you're able to really curate like what the message that you're trying to send behind that graphic. So using Midjourney, I think I think many nonprofits are using ways to communicate a visual representation of what their impact is. So we're tapping into Midjourney for that. We use Canva and other tools, but those are two examples.
Your own background is in strategy consulting with Deloitte. Um,
Yes.
so am I right that you're using AI to help think about and frame strategy? And obviously, you're not turning over the keys saying, all right,
Yeah.
AI, you make the call. But in the same way at Deloitte, when you might think about a framework and the key variables to consider, pros and cons,
Mhm.
are you using AI to help you tease out strategy and analysis and kind of describe what that process looks like?
Yeah. It's a great question. So yes, I guilty that I am a strategy consultant by background and by training, and
We won't hold it against you.
don't hold it against me. But I think so I'm a huge fan of frameworks and ways to position data and information to make it clear, right? Especially when you're driving action or really driving through change, and that's what we're doing at the moment. Generative AI is incredibly helpful as a debate partner, as
Hmm.
as really as a validator. So whether, for example, we're thinking about right now diversifying our revenue strategy and thinking about different ways just based on what we've learned through conversations. um, you know and also just the evolution of All Star Code. We are now seeing many more students uh, we have a critical mass going into the workforce. So career readiness for us and workforce development is really important. So how can we provide supports, programming, but also do it in a way that we can work with donors that we know the value proposition is that they are looking for uh, a diverse talent pipeline. Cost for talent acquisition is exorbitantly high. So we have a solution here. We have an opportunity to solve some of that. So how we define our go to market, how we define the different sources of revenue, it's something that I can that I love tapping into generative AI to either provide ideas or to actually to I almost say like you're a begrudging sponsor or corporate partner, don't really believe in the mission. Find holes around this particular strategy, and it'll come back with some things will be I'll dismiss, but other
Mm.
insights they'll have merit, and it's something that we bring back to the team and then continue to workshop. So yeah, generative AI is an incredibly helpful strategy ping pong partner, if you will, when it comes to some of the work that we're doing.
I can tell you're an exceptionally good prompter and prompt engineer. What are a couple of tips you might give listeners for how to get more value out of prompts? And the reason I asked that question right now is you
Yeah.
just mentioned, I think, a great one. You said, if I heard you right, you said, just imagine you were a grumpy shareholder, right? Or you are put yourself in the shoes of a skeptical board member, right? So do you try and give AI specific, like almost like a role to play or a character to act as? And what are some other tricks like that you found to be extra helpful in getting higher value responses?
Yeah, a great question. One, yeah, role-based approach for sure, and I think with a bit of like sentiment added to it, right? So a role plus sentiment
Hmm.
has been interesting to get back the feedback. I also think I recently learned this one, which was really cool, is to basically prompt the AI. If you don't know the answer, just let me know. Like actually, like tell me you don't know, as opposed to give
Brilliant. Don't,
me
don't don't
give me
bullshit me,
garbage.
AI.
Don't
Do
bullshit
not
me.
bullshit
Yeah,
me.
yeah. If
Just
you
right.
don't know, you don't know. And I thought, and that was actually incredibly helpful, um and actually, and then what I saw was that it did not give me. It actually asked me more questions. That's the other prompt. Uh, recommendation I would give ask me like 5 to 10 questions before you answer for this particular problem that I'm looking to get your insight into.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so
That's
it
good.
forces so it forces the AI to ask you, to interview you, and then you are able to provide
Right.
responses, and then it'll provide again a pretty good feedback.
Circling back to education for a bit, you've given so much thought to how you're using this locally with your projects.
Mhm.
You, I'm sure, have thoughts about how the education system more broadly can smartly incorporate AI. What excites you about the future of AI in education, and what are trends you hope to see more of on a more macro level?
Yeah, I mean, I think the transformative potential of AI and emerging technologies in the hands of our youth is inspiring. I mean, the tools are not just machines; they're these platforms to amplify the dreams, aspirations, and potential in students. I really believe that, and that's just
Mm.
overall with emerging tech. What's exciting is that our students will have skills acquisition and fluency in these tools, moving into an age that continues to evolve so rapidly. As you said, maybe it's not 10 years, it's probably a month that our students will get a sense of mastery. um, and it's crucial to have access to these tools, particularly for underrepresented and underestimated communities. We need to have access. Like, these tools are already being implemented in schools throughout the country, but likely schools that are much more well resourced than public schools,
Hmm.
or than communities of color that we serve. So that's really important. How can we give the tools so that students can navigate the landscape effectively? That's really that to me is important. Um, what gets me excited is participating in New York City Council hearings that they're talking about the role of AI in public education. There are experiments that are happening. There is there, and I think the other part that is exciting is honestly, and it's probably not the sexiest thing, but regulation. Like having
Hmm.
having a regulated body to to manage our interaction, our human interaction with this type of technology, I think is important and legitimizes what this innovation can do for us. And I think it creates certain guardrails that perhaps manage the risk a bit better, and school districts can start to really implement and take AI into their classrooms again with a regulation framework behind that. I think that's awesome. I think it's really really good. So those are things that excite me. I'm excited to see how in our program our demo day projects will evolve year after year, especially with students now having having fluency in generative AI and adding these sort of components to their demo day projects. I mean, that to me is where we're going to see the innovation in action, and then ultimately that those ideas can really have legs and ultimately and go into the marketplace. We want to see incubation. We want to see tech founders, tech entrepreneurs that are leveraging this technology that come from the All-Star Code community. So we're very excited about it.
Last few questions and I'll let you go. How are you thinking about the issue of inherent bias in AI and making sure that AI is developed in an ethical way that reflects the broad spectrum of society and not, let's call it what it is, just wealthy, straight white men, right? So what, and is there, what, if any, role do you think is in AI in education and All-Star Code in helping reduce biases and helping the advancement of ethical aligned AI?
It's a that we acknowledge it's a pressing concern. I mean, certainly it's a racial equity concern. The lack of diversity and equity in the data sets that underpins machine learning algorithms. It's something that I feel, especially when thinking about an implementation of AI in the public schools, like a core design principle is to address the bias in these data sets. It's got to be it has to be front. It's got to be front of really top of mind and part of the strategic rollout. Without it, I think we continue to exacerbate inequity and inequality in the way that AI is trained. So we know that the data today used to train these algorithms, they fall short. They perpetuate racial bias. So it's certainly not it's not a surprise, but it's also, I think, the more that we can do as All-Star Code to raise the flag, to elevate also, I think, some of the research coming from organizations like the Algorithmic Justice League that really is pushing to combat surveillance technology or combat technology that harms our community, that exacerbates this bias. Like, we got to continue to make sure that equity is on the table, racial equity is on the table when talking about AI. And I think, and then creating laboratories, like I mentioned earlier, we want to create our own language learning model for the future, and that we want to make sure that that's representative of the communities that we serve, and lifting up racial equity being a core component of that data set is super important. So I think, I'm not an AI technologist by trade, but I feel like there should be a concerted effort, perhaps through regulation, that needs to, that those biases and the ethical application of AI is the default, not an option.
Obviously, you don't have a crystal ball. No one does. But I think it's fair to say you've given this a lot more thought than the average person. Where do you see AI in education? What does education look like in, let's say, 5 years or even 10 years? Take your pick. What are some things we might see in the school system that you think could be really freaking cool? Or terrifying, or both? Who knows?
The thing that I think a lot about is data. Is being able to truly personalize the learning experience for students that are also different that have different learning approaches, that are perhaps on a neurodiverse students, right? Or neurodivergent students, being able to use the technology to be able to provide different ways of learning, kinesthetic, just different approaches to learning. I think that would be incredible, right? Instead of and seeing an integrated classroom and and faculty approach to learning, right? We know certain kids need more attention than others, but being able to have that data and create these pathways, I think is super exciting. I think like AI and the value it has for teachers are the backbone of the future of our country, of the economy, of how we navigate this like technologically powered world, and giving them as much support, resources, pay. By the way, they should be paid a lot more. I see that being a huge benefit, and that would be incredible, from lesson planning to dashboards to ways that they can engage with students, to flip classrooms, personalized learning, etc. I think that to me would be incredible. And then maybe the third imagination is, how can AI work with students that are not perhaps are not college bound, but that are trying to find alternative pathways into the workforce, understanding that today, right, that it's September 27th, and we still are operating with a student debt crisis. We're operating in an environment that the Supreme Court has struck down affirmative action that impacts communities of color, and particularly the students that we serve. So and the cost of going to college and the value of college is being questioned, like for the first, I guess not for the first time, but at a really poignant time in our existence. In alternative pathways to the workforce, like how can AI be an accelerant, be a way that can level the playing field as folks are creating economic opportunity for their lives and their communities and their families. So that's something that I would imagine in the next few years.
That's a great, I think, hopeful, upbeat note to end on. I know you're a busy guy, Danny. We'll leave it there. I'm so in awe and inspired by the work you guys are doing. I love the extremely forward-thinking approach you're taking to AI and emerging tech in general, how you're deploying it, how you're playing with it. It's awesome stuff. Thanks so much for sharing your story. I learned a ton. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks so much, Jeff. I really appreciate it. And I hope your learners, I hope all of your listeners also check out allstarcode.org just to learn a little bit more about the organization. We're celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year and continue to be excited about developments in generative AI and how we can combine that in the fight for racial equity in tech.
Happy anniversary. Love it. Thanks again.
Thank you, Jeff.
There you had it. Thanks again to Danny, and thanks to you for listening. Hope you were as inspired by Danny and All Star Code's example as I am. And again, I am legally required to ask you to please subscribe, rate it 5 stars, go crazy, write a quick little review, send it to a friend or maybe someone you haven't seen in 15 years. Send it to them and say, you know what? You might like this. And that can rekindle your friendship. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.